This video is about why the world is getting worse. It doesn't matter where you are, what your background, where you live, you probably felt like the world is on the decline. Things are no longer as good as they were. TV and music is rubbish these days. Everything is more expensive. You seem to get stuck in traffic. There's too many people. There's people everywhere. And a lot of these people are moving around from place to place. I'm going to be explaining to you why the world is getting worse and what you can do to stop it. Now, this seems to be a very on-trend topic at the moment, but there's a question as to whether it's on trend or whether you just got to a phase in your life or you've tuned into the topic, meaning that it's new to you and you're starting to notice how things have changed, because things do change. Nothing stays the same forever. Some things get better, some things get worse, some things get easier, and some things get more difficult. This is one of my favorite quotes, and it sets the video up perfectly. Many an old man will tell you with absolute certainty how much better Coca-Cola used to be. Coca-Cola was invented in 1886. Imagine how disgusting Coke must be now if it has been consistently worsening in quality since then. So think about that. If your life, if the world, if your experience of the world around you is consistently getting worse since the beginning of time, then surely the current incarnation of our world, of the earth, must be at its most hellish now. And tomorrow it will be even worse. And in a year, well, it's unimaginable just how terrible the world must be. Is the world truly getting worse though? Is your country really going down the tubes? Is your town not what it used to be? Is your street not as good and friendly as it used to be 20 years ago? But is this the same everywhere? Because there are no shortage of videos out there which are all titled, "Britain is finished. This is why I'm leaving. The USA is done. I'm going to live abroad." So if the world really is getting worse, is it the same everywhere? Is everywhere getting worse? Is anywhere immune to it? Well, the fact of the matter is that the world isn't actually getting any worse. Things change for better, things change for worse. What was easier yesterday might be more difficult tomorrow, but the world itself isn't actually getting any worse. Reality shifts and it presents itself to us in a different format, and then we then perceive it in a different way. If you genuinely believe and feel as though your country is going down the pan and the world is getting worse, and I dread to think what it will be like for my kids, I, heaven forbid, think what the world might be like in 10 or 20 years' time, well, then this is actually down to you. And it's down to the way you think, it's down to your conditioning, and it's down to your belief system, and it's down to your perception. Your world is getting worse, but not everybody's world is getting worse. And I'm going to tell you why. Two people can look at a group of kids playing around in the street. They're a bit noisy, they're a bit boisterous. One person will look at them and say that they're a group of hooligans and they should be at home. Another person will be looking at the group of kids thinking that they're just playing around being kids. It's all down to your perspective. Now, it doesn't matter what generation you're from. Since the beginning of time, people have thought the world is getting worse. Nobody is impervious to this prerogative and this feeling. People in the 60s thought the 50s were better. If you're in your late 30s, then the 1990s and around the year 2000 were the best decade. They were the best times ever. If you're in your late 40s, then guess what? The 1980s were the golden years. No matter the generation, we're all hankering for the good old days, the days when we all looked the same and everybody had the same belief system, when people were more friendly, when people were approachable, and there was less crime. Can you remember those days? Can you remember when you used to be able to leave your car unlocked overnight? As the years go by and the years pass, you realize that things that used to bring you joy and happiness no longer do. And there are plenty of reasons for this. Your conditioning, your outlook on life, your socialization, your nature nurture. But generally it's down to the lens as the way you view the world. And the way you view the world is formulated by the information that you receive. So if you're receiving certain information, you'll perceive the world in a certain way. Your view of the world loses its color, it loses its shape, Things aren't as vibrant and vivid and as exciting as they used to be, but it doesn't have to be that way for you. And it certainly isn't that way for everybody. The world is only getting worse for you. Your world is getting worse. Your world is bad because not everybody thinks and feels the same way as you do. When you find yourself feeling that way, your attention gets drawn to everything negative. Everything becomes negative, and you start to embody this negative state of being when you start resonating and vibrating at a negative frequency. Not everyone your age and from your background in your location thinks the world is done. Not everybody has that belief. Kids nowadays think the world is fantastic because the world's full of opportunity. It's full of hope. It's full of their future. When you reach a certain age and a certain phase in your life, you start to notice that things have changed. And you can't quite figure out how things changed. You can't quite understand how we allowed them to get in this way. We can't understand how we went from being the good old days to the current days when things just aren't as good. And this approach leads to discontent. And you start to blame other people for your own misfortunes. Then you blame other people, and we start to blame other groups of people. This, coupled with your general negativity and outlook on the world, shifts you and moves you to a negative timeline or a negative lifeline where things truly do become miserable for you. It shifts you to a world where you're unhappy and you're resentful, and you begin to feel as though reality really is getting worse, but it's only for you. And if other people are all saying and mimicking and talking about the same things, it means that you're all resonating on the same negative vibration, which is why maybe your circle of friends or some of the people you speak to in the bar, they're all saying the same thing because you're all thinking in the same way. When something irritates you, it forms part of your attention. You start to see it everywhere. If you hate getting stuck in traffic, you'll be thinking about that traffic before you set off on your important journey. And what will happen? You'll get in your car and you'll get stuck in traffic. This is because you were thinking about it, because you were noticing it, because it formed part of your psyche. Much of the dissatisfaction stems from life not quite working out the way that you'd hoped, the way that you'd dreamed. The game of life hasn't been quite as pleasant or as easy as you'd been led to believe that it would be when you were younger. Life has been a lot harder than you thought it would be. Your friends grew up and they all left town. Other people went on to do bigger and better things. We haven't all grown up to be actors, performers or singers, and we're not all playing in the NFL or in the Premier League. When you perceive other people and you put them on a pedestal as being richer, more successful, leads to jealousy and envy. But at the same time, when we look at people perhaps at the poorer end of the spectrum, people living on welfare, people living on benefits, we then get jealous and envious of them too. So where does that leave you if richer, more successful people are making you angry and poorer people are also making you angry? What happens is you start blaming other people. In this reality, you're conditioned to always want something else. And then when you get that, you'll find that it hasn't brought you happiness, and then you'll want something else. In the United Kingdom, there's a frequency whereby nearly everybody wants to move to Australia. We want to move to New Zealand. People feel that they need to move and pack their bags and go thousands of miles, literally to the other side of the earth, just to find happiness and just to be fulfilled. But is it really worth? And why do people want to move thousands of miles just to work 40 hours a week and pretty much live the same life than they do where they live at the moment? But then the irony is, when you get there, the local people all want to go and live somewhere else. People living there want to pack their bags and go and live in another country because they perceive somewhere else as being more prosperous. And everybody there is saying that their country's going to hell and that their country's going down the drain. So how do we make sense of all of this? I'm not sure what the equivalent is in the USA, but where is it that Americans want to go? Where is it that you want to go? Let me know. Everything I've just discussed can be described as a personal matrix. Because of your conditioning, because of the way that you're thinking and feeling, you create a negative environment for yourself, a school of thought that you tune into and you start resonating at. And again, this leads to discontent and dissatisfaction with your life. One way to transcend this is to really think about what you want. How is it that you want to live? how do you want to feel when you wake up tomorrow morning? Is moving thousands of miles to another country really the answer to this? Are any other countries actually any better? Will your life be better? A couple of major things that you can do. You can ignore the news. I don't say avoid because it's impossible to avoid current affairs, the news, the media. So we have to try and ignore it as much as possible. But not only the news, also lifestyle, TV shows, daytime TV. You'll find that when you stop watching all of those shows, all of those TV programs and documentaries, you'll start to feel better. The reason for this is because your attention isn't being drawn to the negative aspects of reality, the things that you should be worried about and concerned and anxious of. When you're not aware of the things that you might find cause you anxiety, or the things that might find you resonating with discontent, envy, and jealousy, it doesn't even form part of your consciousness, which means that you're happier, leaving you to focus on positive things in the world. By avoiding all of those, it will stop you being sucked in to really powerful pendulums and negative vortexes where everybody's train of thought is all resonating on that low vibrational frequency, where we're all angry about other people and jealous of those people over there. And I'm scared of that group of people, because there's a huge amount of people walking around and they're on the internet who've been drawn into really harmful pendulums, specifically in the last 5 years, but it isn't unique to the last 5 years. I was walking my dog just last week, and a guy who lives maybe a minute or so up the street, he started talking to me about a local politician who'd voted on like a proposition in Parliament. And I was aware of it and I'm not interested, but I played along with it and seemed like I was interested out of politeness. And then all of a sudden he moved to the government are trying to remove cash so that we'll have to start paying for things digitally and electronically so that we can be monitored. But not only that, it's so that we can't avoid paying tax and things like that. And I was thinking, but we've had money for thousands of years. Why is it only now that the government are trying to control you? And I kind of played along and said, yeah, I mean, you might be onto something. And then just out of nowhere, he said, it's the deep state. It's the World Economic Forum. Now, I'm not going to go into that. I know exactly what he's talking about, and I know exactly what pendulum has sucked him into and what he's thinking. Now, a lot of that is all politically motivated, but politics is just an illusion. The information field, the alternative space, it has everything in it that you already need in your life to live a happy, fulfilled, joyful experience. You just decide which sector of the information field to tune into. If you find yourself tuning into a colorful, vibrant, pretty part of it, then guess what? You'll start noticing that the birds sing every morning, the blades of grass, how bright and green they are, and how bright the sky was yesterday, and how blue it was, and how fluffy the clouds are. However, if you attune to the negative, grey, dull, dishwater coloured parts of the information field, then that is what your life will become. You'll start noticing everything negative. You'll start tuning into all the negativity, and that will lead you to feel discontent, envy, anger, jealousy, all of the negative emotions which you want to be trying to avoid because they don't make you feel any better. So you decide whether you want to tune into something positive or whether you want to tune into something negative. And if you tune into something positive, then your life will get better. If you tune into the negative, then this is what your life will be like. Because remember, our inner self reflects the outward world around us. If you're positive and joyful and you can see positivity in everything, then guess what? That's what your world will be like. If it's the opposite to that, then you'll start tuning into everything negative and your world will get worse. If you think about there's 7 billion people in the world, but you can imagine that every human being has its own layer and each layer is stacked on top of each other. If the world was truly descending into hell, then every single layer, every single human layer would have to all be thinking, resonating, thinking the same thing. But it only takes one person to not think that for the world to remain hopeful and full of opportunity. So I hope you've enjoyed this video and this chat today. If you've got any comments, please throw them at me. Like always, like and subscribe. And like always, I will see you folks on the next one. Bye-bye.